Welcome to Secret Story. I didn't have a cell phone in the 90s. Even if I did, text messaging wasn't a thing. I had an email account through my university, but plenty of people still weren't using email. And even if they were, you didn't always know their account. So I had no way of communicating with Kara. I certainly couldn't call her home phone. She was my aunt's stepdaughter and basically my cousin, even though we weren't related by blood. I'd known her since childhood. I'd never once called their house to talk to her. I'd actually spent most of the time avoiding her because she was nerdy, almost 4 years younger than me, and she had a tendency to follow me around like a puppy dog. Which everyone else found cute and hilarious. Everything changed in December of 1998. I was visiting from college during the winter break and horny after a few drinks at the local strip club with Kara's brother. I'd gone into the laundry room looking for a towel so I could clean up. Impulsive, I'd grabbed. Kara had caught me in the act. And instead of running away in horror and telling her family, she had been drawn to it. Then she'd walked away with a smirk. I knew it was wrong. If anyone in our family found out, they would be devastated. It wasn't illegal, but it was definitely taboo. You're not supposed to fool around with your step relations. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Kara was playful. She enjoyed being a tease. She was quick-witted. It wasn't ideal that we were practically related. Although, in a way, that made it somehow. The forbidden nature added to the allure. I was conflicted in the days that followed. I'd lock myself in my bedroom at my parents' house and stroke my wit that Kara had left in my car. Afterward, I would feel guilty, but it would pass. I'd spend hours trying to figure out a way to make contact with her. I knew where she went to school and that I could take a chance and drive up there to try and catch her at the end of the day, but that seemed risky. What if someone else from my family was picking her up that day? Plus, she might think I was being a creep. The last thing she'd said to me was, "See you at Christmas," so maybe she didn't want to see me sooner. And it wasn't like I was going to go back to college without talking to her again. Both our family and Kara's family were going to be at my grandmother's house for a few days. My dad's oldest brother had bought an old farmhouse and a lot of land out in the country years earlier. My grandmother had moved to the same area when she retired to get away from the city. We tried to go out at least every other year for the holidays. My aunt did the same, but Kara sometimes spent Christmas with her mom and stepdad instead. The last time I'd actually spent Christmas with her, she was still a chubby high school freshman instead of a buxom barely legal senior. We drove out on the 23rd with a plan to stay through Christmas and the weekend that followed. My uncle's house was a huge renovated farmhouse with 4 bedrooms upstairs, a master on the ground floor, and a 2-bedroom mother-in-law suite in the basement. His daughters were both married and out of the house, and my grandmother lived in her own house that he had built on his land, so that left 6 bedrooms for guests. I always tried to grab one of the basement rooms since there was also a big screen TV down there. My cousin, Kara's stepbrother, usually did the same. The parents and girls usually took the upstairs rooms, although the girls fussed about never getting the basement. And my dad's youngest brother and his family stayed at my grandmother's place. I was really hoping Kara would find a way to stay downstairs that year, but couldn't imagine how. Once everyone arrived, the arrangements ended up the same as usual. I had a room to myself in the basement right next to Kara's stepbrother, who I normally loved to hang out with. But I wasn't looking forward to it that year. Kara was up 2 flights of stairs in a guest room right next to my parents and across the hall from my sister. That first evening I was desperate to get some alone time with Kara and didn't know how to do it. She was either playing it cool or just being a cruel tease because she barely acknowledged me. There wasn't as much as a sly smile or a covert wink when nobody was looking. It was making me nervous. Everyone came over to the big house for dinner. When my dad's youngest brother was greeting everyone, he made an awkward joke about how Kara used to idolize me. She brushed it off by saying that it was pretty common for high school kids to admire those in college. It was the right thing to say, but it definitely made me wonder if I'd misread things. Was it silly for me to think she had a crush on me? The whole situation was making me anxious. I'd gone from worried that I couldn't avoid the temptation to feeling foolish about thinking she'd even want to tempt me again. The fact that I was sitting at a table with all my relatives made it worse. At some point after dinner, I saw Kara head down the hall toward the restroom. I knew it would be stupid to follow her, but my stomach was in knots and I had to know where I stood. "I have to go to the restroom," I announced loudly to my cousin who was sitting nearby. "Nobody cares," she said. I went down the hallway to the bathroom door. I heard the sink running. Kara came out a second later. That I think my heart stopped for just a second while our eyes locked. I'd never had any interest in what she thought until a week earlier she flashed a wicked smile and my heart started beating again. "Hey, you," she said quietly. She looked down the hall to make sure we were alone and then leaned in close. "Did you pack my—" "No." "Why not?" she asked in shock. "Because I put them in my pocket instead." She smiled again. "No you didn't," she said with a giggle. "I did. Want to see?" She laughed again. "We can't. Not here. Not now." "Why not?" I responded. "Now you're shy." She blushed and rolled her eyes at my cheesy wordplay. "I want you to see," I said. I took her arm and pulled her into the bathroom with me. I shut the door behind us. "This is naughty," she said. "I thought you liked naughty," I responded. "I do. But someone is going to miss us. Or what if someone comes to use the bathroom and we are coming out together? Then they're probably going to have some questions," I said. "Then hurry," she said. "Show me." I felt confident. It took my time pretending to rummage in my pocket that I pulled both pants pockets out to show they were empty and offered an exaggerated shrug. "I guess I forgot them," I said. She gave me a wry smirk. "I knew you were just teasing me," she said. "I guess you need to give me the ones you're wearing." I took Kara's hand. "No," she protested. "There isn't time. Just show them to me," I said. That I nodded. She hesitated for just a moment. "Maybe you can feel them later," she said. That I kissed her. Without thinking about it. She kissed back. "Wow," she said. "We have to stop." She stepped toward the door. "I hope nobody is out there." I went back to the living room and nobody had missed me. Everyone who wasn't staying at the house eventually left. The grown-ups stayed upstairs to catch up and I went to the basement media room with my sister, my cousin, and Kara to watch a movie. Normally that would have led to half an hour of heated debate, but Kara and I were pretty apathetic. Within a few minutes, the lights were down, the sound was up, my cousin was kicked back in a leather recliner, my sister had a sofa to herself, and Kara and I were next to one another on a love seat in the darkest side of the room. Everyone was under blankets. My sister told Kara they could share the couch, but she made an excuse about it being too cozy and she didn't want to fall asleep. I was 21 years old and a college student. So I was no stranger to discreetly around with other people in the room. Her father may have murdered me on the spot if he caught us. And yet that somehow still felt less risky than letting Kara touch me with her brother and my sister in the room. That I had no intention of stopping her. Kara was patient. We both kept our eyes on the screen and occasionally glanced around the room to make sure we didn't have a horrified audience. Then she got up suddenly and went to the bathroom. Unlike me, she didn't feel the need to announce it before going. I noticed that my sister had fallen asleep on the couch. She was only 17 but had been allowed a glass of wine at dinner. My cousin was still awake. But he was focused on the movie. I couldn't focus at all on the movie. Well over an hour passed before I heard my cousin snoring. My sister was still asleep. I nodded towards the bedroom I was using. She smiled and got up quietly. That I followed Kara to the room and started to close the door. "You can't," she whispered. "What if they wake up? It will be suspicious." If the door is open we can play it off. I really didn't care at that point. I had no chance of lasting long. Stay here for a few hours, I pleaded when she stood up. She kissed my lips again. You know I can't. Of course, she was right. I can't wear those again, she said. Maybe they'll make you think of me. It only takes a minute to comment or vote. Stories get thousands of views, but the authors get very little feedback or appreciation. If you read the whole thing and enjoyed it, then leave a note. Welcome to Secret Story. It was in the summer holidays just after I graduated and I went around to my cousin as I was bored at home. His mommy invited me in and hugged me, remarking on how much I'd grown up since my last visit and how handsome I'd become. She told me that she just got out of the shower now as Stephen and his dad went fishing. Aunt Kate was somewhere in her 40s. Would you like some lemonade? She asked. I could do with that right now, it's so hot outside, I replied while she went to the refrigerator to get us each a glass lemonade. She knocked the house keys off the kitchen counter and as she bent over to pick it, she didn't even notice, so I just acted like nothing happened. So Craig, now that you've finally done with high school, what's your plans for next year? I decided to get a summer job then study from next year on out of state. And how does your girlfriend feel about you going off to study and leaving her behind? I don't have a girlfriend no longer, me and Michelle broke up weeks ago. Michelle was a girl I was dating, 18 years old as hell but didn't want to have until marriage, so we broke up after she found me cheating on her with her best friend Nicole. I'm sorry to hear about that, she said, but I'm sure a lad like yourself would attract girls wherever he went. I would have snatched you up a long time if we weren't related, she added, and it got me thinking. Was my aunt hitting on me? But I was starting to enjoy the conversation, so I continued. Why would you say that, Aunt Kate? You and Uncle Greg having problems perhaps? I really shouldn't be telling you this, but I feel so comfortable talking to you. No, I'm sorry for asking, that's private issues. I will feel better if I tell someone about it, she said. Lately your uncle has become a total workaholic, he is hardly at home, rarely finds time to spend with me and has neglected my. Do you suspect he is cheating on you perhaps? No, Greg isn't that type of man. I would know of something like that, and besides his age is catching up to him. In the past our was nothing special, but we at least had often before. I was starting to enjoy this topic. I'm sorry for asking, Aunt, but what's you like nowadays then? 3 months, Craig. That's how long ago it was since Greg gave me decent. Do you know how lonely I've become, and there was no way to relieve these feelings. I kind of felt the same when dating Michelle, but my aunt wasn't the type to cheat on her husband. I'm a woman, I have needs for God's sake, and he failed to fulfill it, she complained. My life has become so boring. I was turned on by what she said, but I felt sorry for her and tried to comfort her, and as she came closer I had my arms around her and she had her head on my shoulder as I hugged her. Do you wanna? She asked. I didn't know what to say, so. No, Aunt Kate, that wouldn't feel right. Can you help your Auntie Kate out please? I want to feel your young deep in me and I need you to fulfill my needs, she said while smiling at me. What could I do? How could I refuse? Realizing she was serious, I wouldn't let the chance slip through my fingers. Oh, Aunt Kate, I asked, your uncle never looks at me like that, she said. Started to after 1 hour gasping for air, we both laying on the bed thinking about what just happened. I couldn't believe. Trying to catch our breath, we stood up. Thanks, Craig, she said. No, I should thank you, Aunt. We should do it again soon, I said as we went to go shower. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. No part of this story can be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means without written permission from the author. All characters are fictitious, and any similarity to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental unless otherwise stated. Welcome to Secret Story. My mother and I have been living together for almost 3 years. My father left my mother and I with debt and not much else. He left us for a younger woman in his office, with no money and no means to pay off the debt that my father placed in my mother's name. We moved from the high life in New York City to sunny California. My mom had a sister that lived in the desert there and she was willing to help us out. There was a catch though. My mom and I had to share a room and my Aunt Casey and my cousin Lee would have to start sharing a room. We were so poor that when we took the bus to California all we could take was a single suitcase. That is my record, 7 times in a day. I think I started to feel lightheaded that day. I am not a skinny kid and with no money and a shit-bag father I was not very popular with the girls. I am not sure if my mom ever knew about my girl troubles, if she did she never showed it. The bus arrived in California after 3 days of hard traveling. Let me be the first to tell you that the bus never stops for long periods of time. They stop long enough to change drivers and take a piss. They don't stop for meals. When we arrived at the bus terminal I was starving. Thank God my aunt brought food. I was starving. I think my stomach ate itself. I ate my sandwich and headed out to get the bags. My mother and Aunt Casey immediately started to talk and cry about what happened with my father. My aunt showed us to our shared room with only one bed and then I started to cry. Oh my God, I thought, how am I going to spank the money now? I just dropped the bags, turned to my mother and started to complain. It didn't get that far. Over the next couple of weeks we moved the room around to better fit our needs. It was hard to have our privacy though. I would sleep next to my mom without backs to each other. My aunt and Lee did the same thing with their room. We all got along really well. Our new family ate together and watched movies together and worked out together. My mom took a job answering phones with my aunt at a call center. Over the next couple of months life was good. Being in a new city and state and school didn't help me. I had to try to find a girlfriend. Everyone in California is different from the people back in New York. The girls were and they never wanted to talk to a fat guy. So I struck out. I really started to hate life and became very depressed. One day I was in our room on the bed crying. I just lay there on our queen-size bed sobbing. I had no luck with the girls and to top it off I could never go out because we had no money. My mother walked in the room and sat down next to me. I turned my back to her and buried my face into my pillow. I didn't want her to see me this way. I was embarrassed that my mother could hold it together and I was losing it. After all I was only 16 years of age. What the matter? My mother asked me with a sympathetic look on her face that I could tell that my mother was carrying the world on her shoulders. I wanted to be strong like a rock but instead I was just a piece of moss blowing in the wind. I am not strong for you, I said with a sniffle. I want to be the man of the family but I am weak. I buried my head deeper into my pillow again. My mother turned to me and said, Scott, we have all had to make sacrifices that we normally have never had to do. You are a man and don't think that I have not noticed with you lying next to me at night. I have had just as hard of a time as you have, but son, what you do in those hard times is what makes you a man. My mom then leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. I was kind of shocked at what she told me. Let's just say that my mother was not much of the motivational speaker. I rolled over and faced her and my smile returned. That night when we both headed for bed I was really horny, so I thought that I could head to the bathroom. The problem was my aunt was soaking in the tub. I thought, what do? I was so damn horny. I headed back to the room. When I arrived at the door I saw that it was cracked. I went to reach for the handle and saw a shadow. I stopped for a second and watched the door that I could see my mother walking around getting ready for bed. I was getting into it when I heard footsteps coming down the hall. My Aunt Casey turned the corner and said, Hey Scott, are you heading to bed? Yeah, just heading to bed. Have a good night, Aunt Casey. I replied and then walked right into the bedroom. That I must have caught my mother off guard because she jumped when I walked in. I turned my back to the hallway and said good night to my aunt. When I turned around I saw that my mother was trying to find something to cover up with. Mom, don't worry about covering up, I'm not. I caught my mom out of the corner of my eye and she was in shock. She didn't move. Was all that my mother could mutter. Scott, my mother started. She never looked away though. I turned to my mother and said, "Is it time for bed?" "Scott, I am your mother. I am the woman that gave birth to you. What you need is a girlfriend." "Mom, Nancy, I am your son, but I am a man. We both have needs and I want to be the man for you. You said that I was the man of the family. I am going to be that man tonight that I did not climb under the covers." I just watched my mother. My mom was starting to shake a little. Man, was she nervous. I climbed up to meet my mother's eyes. "Scott, it has been a long time since someone has me. Please take it slow." Then both of them collapsed. For the next couple of months my mother and I explored that. My mother wanted to try something new. I wasn't sure what she had in mind, but my birthday was coming soon. My mother said it was going to be a joint gift. I was ready to see what is going to happen. To be continued. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. No part of this story can be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means without written permission from the author. All characters are fictitious, and any similarity to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental unless otherwise stated.